Ever feel like you're, trying to solve a puzzle, but you're pretty sure some key pieces are just missing?
Yeah, that feeling of not quite getting the full picture.
Exactly. Well, today, we're trying to hand you some of those key pieces. We're doing a deep dive into this really powerful speech given in Uganda by Uhuru Kenyatta.
Ah, yes, that one.
Yes.
Definitely made waves, didn't it? Far beyond Kenya itself.
It really did. And look, this wasn't just standard political rhetoric.
No, not at all. It felt like he was really trying to diagnose something fundamental, identifying these roadblocks to progress that you see echoed across the continent, not just in one place.
Right, and while the setting was Uganda, the core message, this kind of urgent call to action, but also a really blunt look at the problems, it feels particularly aimed, I think, at the younger generation.
He gets into things like corruption, ethnic politics, weak institutions, and this sense of detachment that can follow.
Yeah, serious issues, but, crucial to unpack. So our mission today is really to get to the heart of this speech, and especially what it's saying to millennials and Gen Z, the ones who are really inheriting the future.
Okay, so let's start where he does. He pinpoints these three critical failures, right, that are holding things back. First one up, corruption.
The big one.
Always. But it's not just saying corruption is bad. He really dissects how it specifically damages the prospects for young people.
Right. It's not just about abstract figures on a spreadsheet. It's about the consequences of that missing money.
Precisely. Think about it. The funds that are supposed to go to improving schools or equipping hospitals. These are the things that give young people a fair shot, a foundation.
And when that money gets siphoned off.
Well, it doesn't just slow things down. It breeds this really deep frustration, this feeling that the game is rigged from the start. Imagine being a bright young person, maybe a doctor, and you just can't get the basic equipment you need because someone, somewhere, mismanaged the funds.
It kills opportunities right at the source. And the second failure he points to, this whole issue of ethnic politics, favoritism, patronage.
Yeah, the who you know system, basically, where your connections, maybe your ethnic group, matter more than your actual skills or qualifications.
That just guts the whole idea of national unity, doesn't it? And meritocracy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It fundamentally undermines it. If you're a young person, just starting out, and you see jobs or opportunities going to people based on their tribe instead of their talent.
Yeah.
Well, it's incredibly demoralizing.
Yeah, you'd feel totally excluded.
Right. It creates this sense of unfairness. And honestly, it limits the potential of the entire generation because you're not putting the best people in the right places. Yeah. Patronage, it's about leaders giving jobs or favors to supporters, not based on merit. It's corrosive.
And the third element he flags is this personalization of the state. Weakening those core institutions.
Exactly. The institutions like the courts, the civil service, they're meant to provide stability, rule of law, a level playing field.
But when it becomes more about the individuals in power,
then the focus shifts away from strong, reliable systems. It becomes about personal whims, political loyalty. And that creates this climate of uncertainty. Young people, maybe more than anyone, need to trust that there are consistent rules, impartial institutions, if they're going to plan their lives, start businesses, invest in their future.
Without that trust, everything feels shaky.
Yeah, it erodes faith in the whole system, makes progress unpredictable.
And Kenyatta's argument is that these three things together, corruption, ethnic favoritism, weak institutions, they lead to something really dangerous. Apathy, disengagement.
People might be physically there, but emotionally, mentally, they've checked out. They don't feel invested.
He had that anecdote, didn't he, about why people end up asking leaders for cash directly.
Yes, that was quite revealing. He talks about leaders being approached by citizens asking for personal help, like money for school fees or hospital bills.
And his point was?
His point was sharp. He said, look, if those leaders were actually doing their jobs, properly representing their people, making sure public services like healthcare, education, roads worked, then citizens wouldn't be forced into begging for individual handouts.
The system should be providing those things.
Exactly. Which leads to that incredibly blunt quote he used. You were sent to Parliament to go and speak on behalf of your people, not to speak on behalf of your stomach.
Wow. Yeah, that cuts right through. It's about service over self-interest.
Absolutely. And this internal weakness, these vulnerabilities he's describing, they aren't happening in a vacuum. External actors are watching.
Right. This is where it gets really critical for the future. He points out that these internal problems, these fissures, as he calls them.
The fissures of men, exploiting divisions.
They're visible. Yep. International embassies, other countries, they see these weaknesses.
Precisely. And that makes the continent vulnerable to destructive proxy conflicts. External powers pursuing their own interests, often resources, can exploit these internal divisions.
And the consequences for young people.
Devastating. Long-term instability, regions destabilized by conflicts fought over agendas set elsewhere. It directly impacts education, livelihoods, basic safety for young people caught in the middle.
He also connects this vulnerability to the rise of violent extremism, doesn't he? He mentions groups like Al-Shabaab, the ADF.
Yes, he draws a direct line. He argues that when society isn't inclusive, when there's widespread disillusionment and lack of opportunity, it creates a kind of vacuum.
A space that extremist groups can exploit.
Exactly. They thrive in those conditions. And he stresses, importantly, that these groups aren't bound by borders or ethnicity. They're often transnational. So the response has to be united, Pan-African.
The stakes are just incredibly high. He warns about losing entire generations.
He uses the term cannon fodder. It's a terrifying image. Losing generations of young people to conflict or extremism, derailing any chance of real progress.
It's a really stark warning. Which brings us, I guess, to his core message for the youth, for millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah, he pivots directly to them. He actually says, you millennials and Gen Zs, and then delivers that killer line, nobody outside of Africa is coming to save you.
Wow, that's incredibly direct. No sugarcoating it.
None at all. It's a challenge. Own your future. Take responsibility. Cut through any idea that some external savior is going to fix things.
And he backs it up with that Elric Cleaver quote, too.
Right. You're either going to be part of the solution or you're part of the problem.
No fence sitting allowed.
Pretty much. No room for being passive. He's saying this is the moment. You have agency. You have the power to make change. And the tools you need, they're actually within reach.
And maybe the biggest tool he points to is, well, sheer numbers, the demographics.
The demographic power, absolutely. The stats are, frankly, staggering. Median age across Africa projected for 2025. Just 19.3 years.
19.3 compared to what globally?
Global median is 30.4 years. And get this, over 65% of the entire African population is under the age of 25.
65% under 25. That's an incredible concentration of youth.
It's a massive demographic bulge, a potentially transformative force, a demographic dividend if it can be harnessed.
So that huge youth population, combined with this clear-eyed view of the problems, the corruption, the divisions, the weak institutions.
That's the foundation for his call to action. The future isn't just going to happen to them. It's something this generation, he argues, needs to actively build, shape it themselves.
Okay, so let's try and tie this together. Kenyatta's speech, it gives this really clear diagnosis of the big obstacles, corruption, ethnic politics, fragile institutions, and how damaging they are.
Especially their impact.
But crucially, it's not a message of despair. He turns directly to millennials and Gen Z.
And puts the responsibility, but also the power, right in their hands to forge something better.
He's really clear. Don't wait for outside help. The capacity for change, real fundamental change, is internal. It lies with Africa's youth.
And those numbers, that huge youth population, give them immense potential leverage. They could be the engine for progress.
Which leads us, I suppose, to the final thought we want to leave you with. Given that demographic reality, over 65% under 25, what are the most impactful ways for this generation to actually be the solution Kenyatta talks about?
Yeah, how can they take that potential energy, those numbers, and translate them into tangible change? Into building the future that they deserve, the one he envisions?
It's a huge question, something definitely worth thinking about long after we wrap up this deep dive.